The Monday morning quarterbacking is well underway as Democratic Party officials in Georgia deal with the news that the party's 2024 national convention is going to Chicago and not Atlanta. Joining me now is Todd, moderator of NBC's Meet the Press. So, Chuck, we have seen some analysis here of why President Joe Biden wanted to go with Chicago, even though Georgia has been very good to Democrats. So was this an easy decision or a difficult one for the president and the DNC?
Oh, I think it was a difficult one politically, but it became an easy decision financially. Look, these conventions, in some ways, they're burdens to the two major parties because they're such a financial, they're giant financial commitments. And how to pay for it and make sure you're not distracted from money you want to raise for the presidential in order to fund your convention. And you have a billionaire Democratic governor of Illinois who essentially promised to fill in the gap. And, you know, wow, that guy will pay for it. Joe Biden was going to have to do all this fundraising. So I hate to say that everything comes down to money sometimes, but sometimes everything comes down to money. Throw in the issue of not enough union hotels compared to Chicago and them wanting to cut down on intra-party fights. I think they took Chicago because it was going to create the least amount of agita internally, even though I would argue politically it makes a lot more sense to be in Atlanta than Chicago.
Certainly a lot of factors at play there. Let's talk about the Supreme Court and Justice Clarence Thomas. He's very popular with the Republicans, especially here in his home state of Georgia, but there is now a glaring spotlight on him because of his relationship with a GOP donor, and really there's a spotlight on the entire court if you think about it when it comes to these vague ethics enforcement. So what do we think is going to happen with this? Where's this going to go?
Well, look, we've had a Supreme Court justice end up having to resign over questions of a relationship with a donor, a justice named Abe Fortas. Back in the late 60s, he was going to be elevated to Chief Justice, and during that confirmation process, a relationship with a donor became problematic, and he ended up resigning and leaving the court completely. I don't think that's going to happen here, but the fact is there is no requirements, if you will, that these Supreme Court justices have to fulfill when it comes to whether their financial dealings or things like that. The rest of the federal judiciary has to comply, but not the justices themselves. This is a separation of powers issue. Same thing with the executive branch. Congress can pass laws that apply to everybody but two people, the president and the vice president. So ultimately, this may be on the Chief Justice, John Roberts. He's the head of the judiciary branch. He can force new rules for the justices to comply. This is a terrible look. It really looks like Clarence Thomas was bought and paid for by a donor. He bought his mom's house, and she still lived in it, and he fixed it up for her, and he provided his wife with a six-figure salary by starting a political committee and putting her in charge of it. There's really no other it's hard to sit here and rationalize how any of that is anything other than a bad look at a minimum or worse, if you want to think the worst. So I do think something's going to come up this, but it's not as easy as just passing along Congress.
Yeah, the optics are certainly at play here. Another big story this week is the abortion issue in politics. You'll be speaking about it with Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin on Sunday. We're seeing legal discussion about medication and a new restrictive law signed in Florida. A lot of credit for the Democrat success nationwide in 2022 is given to the abortion fight. So, Chuck, by the looks of things, this debate isn't going anywhere before the 2024 election.
It's not. I mean, in fact, it now looks like, and this was a warning that some people had made inside the Republican Party to those activists that were really pushing to overturn Roe v. Wade. Be careful what you wish for, because it will make, instead of having this sort of, hypothetical debate about abortion, every single elected official, whether you're a city council member or you're president of the United States, might have a role in whether or not abortion is legal in some part of this country. And right now, the consensus in the country is that abortion should be legal. And it's not a close call. It's about a 65-35 split. So anything that is farther away from where the middle is politically problematic. So for the GOP these days. So I don't know what could happen between now and November of 2024 that wouldn't make abortion the number one or number two issue going into the election.
All right, final question, Chuck. This week, the White House announced a star-studded group to be on the president's Committee on Arts and Humanities, including Lady Gaga, George Clooney, Shonda Rhimes, and Kerry Washington. So, Chuck, if you could preside over that committee just for a day, what would be the first thing you'd do?
That's interesting. Look, my whole thing is, I think the arts are the next place we have to go to educate people about history. I think the best way, and that's what I'd be doing, encouraging more actors. You have a passion about a particular issue, go tell a story in our recent past or our nation's history that will help educate the public about the problem today. I'm a huge believer. There's only so much you and I can do to educate the public about the news. I think our arts and sciences, and it goes back, centuries of civilizations. That's what I'd be encouraging them. We have a gap in understanding what the whole idea of America is about. I'd like to see more attempts by the artistic community to continue to lift up stories that truly help tell the story that, hey, unlike any other country on earth, we're a country that's united by an idea, not by an ethnicity or anything else.
And that would be meeting the people where they are. Chuck, thank you so much. Meet the Press airs Sunday morning at 10 on 11 Alive.